Strahd von Zarovich, a medium undead. Alright, with 16 natural AC, 17 D8 hit dice, and a constitution bonus of 18. For the heck of it, let's throw in 15 wisdom and 18 charisma. And is expected to be a CR 15 vampire. Got the base stuff out of the way, skipping over stats. We do, in the skills section, have 3 saves of Dex, Wisdom, and Charisma. So let's switch that saving throw section to the 3 to 4 saves, giving Strahd a +2 effective AC bonus. And we don't care about the skills, but Strahd does have damage resistance of necrotic, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. We will switch this to resistance, giving Strahd a 1.25 times hit point bonus. And then after that, we have nothing else to really worry about here. So let's skip right down into the traits section and see that we have Shape Changer. Well, Shape Changer is great for the campaign, but not for determining Strahd's abilities and CR rating. So we skip Shape Changer. Legendary Resistance. Well, we can add that in right here for the Tarask and give Strahd the +3 legendary resistances that he has, for a total of 90 hit points added on to the base 144 that he already has, bumping it up to 270. As we can see here on the side, we're already getting into a DCR 14 so far. Misty Escape is just good for when he dies or is defeated. After that, we have Regeneration, which we can also add in here, which is going to add in some effective hit points. And every round, he's going to regain hit points unless something else happens to him. So for the first 3 rounds of combat, he's going to gain an extra 60 hit points, which is bumping his DCR even further up to now an 18. And then we can skip over that, because that's all we need for the regeneration. And then spellcasting. All right. Thankfully, I went through the trouble and made that whole thing of spell damage. So this is going to be a lot faster. So Strahd is a level 9 spellcaster. For his cantrips, at will has Mage Hand, Prestidigitation, and Ray of Frost. Well, let's come over here to the cantrips and grab Ray of Frost. For Strahd's first level spells, he has Comprehend Language, Fog, Cloud, and Sleep, so no damage dealing spells there, although Sleep could be helpful. Doesn't help his CR right now. Second level spells, he has Detect Thought, Gust of Wind, and Mirror Image. Those don't help. Third level, we have Animate Dead, which is handy, but technically won't help his CR rating. Fireball, which is a common spell for pretty much all spellcasting monsters. Got a spellcasting monster? Fireball. Just throw it in there. After that, we have 4th level Blight, Greater Invis, and Polymorph. Greater Invis is probably what he's going to be concentrating on, or Animate Dead. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to say Greater Invis, because, hey, why not? And on top of that, let's also throw Blight in, and Blight is a 4th level spell. And then after that, we have Animate Objects. Oh, dear lord. Okay. Animate Objects is the big one here. And Scrying. So for 5th level, this is going to be where Strahd is getting a ton of damage out of here. This spell is so crazy, I actually had to break it down into tiny objects, small, medium, large, and huge objects. Now, you can do a bunch of combinations of, all right, well, I want maybe, a couple small objects and 1 medium and maybe a large, but you don't get the most damage out of that. The most damage comes from either tiny or small objects, regardless of what level it's cast at. So if you were to grab 1 huge object and a couple tiny objects, the huge object would be the tank. The tiny ones would be kind of dealing the damage. We're going to take the small objects. So, for instance, we could say Strahd grabs a whole bunch of coins or whatever and animates those, and they start doing a lot of damage, as we can see here. So we're going to use the small objects just because this does the most amount of damage. Throw that in there. All right, and we'll get rid of that. Ah, look at that. Fireball actually beats out the Animate Objects. Surprising. But Animate Objects is a concentration spell, I believe. Let me see here. Yes, okay. Animate Objects is a concentration spell. So that's going to be a whole bunch of damage on the base attack. So I'm going to hazard a guess that maybe this is the actual spell Strahd is concentrating on and not necessarily Greater Invis. But we still may need Greater Invis later on. So let's take a look here. Spell slots. And as we see here, when you upcast it even further, you know, you can get 117 points of damage from your animate objects at a spell level 9, which is insane. And you just, you know, you concentrated on it and then have them as a bonus action attack, which I believe is how that works. Yeah, you can mentally you can tell them to mentally do stuff on your turn. So that's going to be a lot of damage. That's really great. All right, let's figure out all of this spell damage. So what would we say? Actually, you know what? Let's hold off on that real quick and take a look at some of its other abilities before I go too further. We got Spider Climb. So Strahd can Spider Climb creepily along the walls, which is perfect, and gets no effect from Spider Climb, unfortunately. Looking at Strahd's last trait he has, Vampiric Weakness. Surprisingly enough, this is probably going to have no effect on Strahd whatsoever, determining his CR values, because basically the CR is just kind of like a flex. That's really all it seems to be. So let's take a look at Strahd's actions before we calculate the spells it can do. And I'll do all that here just for the heck of it. So, Unarmed Strike. It's a melee weapon attack, 9 to hit, and is dealing 8 points of, technically 8.5 points of bludgeoning damage and 14 necrotic damage. And Strahd can grapple a target instead of dealing the bludgeoning damage. Well, the bludgeoning damage is technically going to be a little better, but let's take that into account later on. So our Unarmed Strike can do a total of 22.5 points of damage. The Bite, on the other hand, can do, let's see here, what do we got? 9 to hit, 5 reach, deals, all right, 7.5 points of piercing damage plus 10.5 points of necrotic damage. And then their health points go down. All right, so we have a total of 18 damage from the Bite. And then Charm, let's see here. Charm's thing is all about, you know, taking control of someone, which is helpful. The Children of the Night. Strahd magically calls 2d4 swarms of bats or swarms of rats, provided the sun isn't up. While outdoors, Strahd can call 3d6 wolves instead. The called creatures arrive 1d4 rounds, acting as allies of Strahd and obeying his spoken commands. The beasts remain for 1 hour. Children of the Night probably doesn't do anything. More than likely, Children of the Night may add in some damage, but because they're swarms, they're such low damage that may not help. Although on the one thing, it is like some nickeling and diming. So let's see what we end up doing with the spell damage and some of the legendary actions here. All right, so the first legendary action is no effect because it's just moving without provoking attacks of opportunity. Technically, that could be plus 2 damage per round based off of the aggressive trait like orcs have. If that's not the case, then, I mean, it's great, but unless you really need to move, I'm sure it all depends on the situation of combat. That'll certainly be extremely handy. But let's take a look at the unarmed strikes here. So we have 3 uses of unarmed strikes. So we'll do the unarmed strikes times 3, totaling out to 67.5 points of damage. And then the last legendary action is Bite. So he can do a Bite, which costs 2 actions, and then we would also add in a unarmed strike just to round that out as well. So we would get a Bite plus 1 unarmed strike for a total 40.5 points of damage. So it's not the greatest, and if we were going for straight pure damage, let's see here. I would say probably animate objects first as his action. And that would also technically be the bonus action, right? Let's see here. Yeah, it takes an action to cast animate objects, and then as a bonus action, you can tell them to attack. So that's going to be the first round of combat. And then after that, we're looking at the 65 points of damage again, each time telling the animated objects to do something else. Then, and also, we have all the legendary actions that Strahd can do. So we're going to add in, just for the heck of it, the unarmed strikes. And then after that, oh, I also forgot the multi-attack. Let's take 2 steps back here. Strahd makes 2 attacks, only one of which can be a bite. Well, the funny part is that the multi-attack is better if he takes 2 unarmed strikes. So we'll just multiply that times 2 for 45 points of damage. So what would be his next action in combat? You know, if we're looking at straight damage, then Fireball would be the next thing. He would cast a Fireball for rounds 2 and 3. That's our maximum amount of damage here. And I only say that because the multi-attack is so low at 45 points of damage maximum here. So we would come in here, take a Fireball for round 2 and another Fireball for round 3, as well as telling his animated silverware, dinnerware, as Cornucopia told us, to go around and attack players, and then also doing a whole bunch of unarmed strikes from his legendary actions. So we're looking at a total of 174 points of damage between, round 1, animating the objects, and then telling them to move around. Round 2, throwing a Fireball, dealing with the animated objects again, and then doing some more legendary actions, and then a rinse repeat for round 3 until he's out of, spell level 4 slots, which is only 3 of. I don't believe, looking back here at Strahd's attack patterns, there's any way to get higher damage. I think this is the maximum way to get as much damage out as possible in the first 3 rounds of combat. I'm sure we could play with some stuff, but more than likely, this is going to be the maximum way to do it right here. So we're going to take 174 and throw that into the tool to see what we get for the OCR. So 174 points of damage, and I need his plus to hit, which is 9. Well, I mean, here's something. We've got a CR20. CR20 for Strahd von Zarovich. Okay. This is a highly underrated vampire, especially if you just go the attack route that I've suggested by hurling fireballs and summoning up the dinnerware. And that's not even taking into account the charm and the Children of the Night. If we were to add in the Children of the Night damage, it would probably shift it a little bit more, but it is what it is. I would say that those swarms of bats, rats, or the wolves that come in are acting on their own accord, and they would just be the XP value that they give off as well. From the looks of things, we've got DCR 18 coming from, what do we have here? The modified hit points is 330, which puts us at a DCR of 18, expecting an AC of 19. Strahd has a base of 16, but with all of his modifications, it's an 18. So if we come back over the chart, that's actually -1 under the expected, but because it's only it's a 1 difference, there's no shift to the DCR, and our DCR is an 18. Now for 174 points of damage, that's a little bit on the higher end of an OCR 22, expecting an attack bonus of 11. Actually, let's shift that a little bit because we're using spells to attack with. So what is Strahd's DC rating here? It's down here, and it's an 18. That might actually shift it just a tiny bit. So let's switch that here. Although he is doing a whole bunch of hits with the legendary action, so it would be... Let's go back to his spell damage tracker for a minute. So each of these is going to be 3 hits. So that's a total of 9 physical hits. But we have a load of animated objects that are not really hitting as effectively. The 2 hit for our small or tiny objects is kind of on the low side, so they may not be doing nearly as much damage as we see here, but based off of the average, we could say that this is roughly what we're getting. And then he's only also doing 2 fireballs in the first 3 rounds of combat. So it looks like the 9 to hit is actually correct. So let's go back to this. I mean, if we throw in the 18 that he has, and just for the heck of it, see how that would shift things. He's still a CR20. And what do we have here? So we have 174 points of damage, which puts us into an OCR of 22, expecting an attack bonus of 11. He has an attack bonus of 9. That's actually -2 under the expected, resulting in a -1 shift from 22 to 21. So, as powerful as he is, he technically isn't hitting as often as he should with his attack bonus. But his hit points and his armor class are all right where they're supposed to be. So, technically he's a little weaker, in essence, if he's slinging all these, all these fireballs and whatnot around. I'm gonna take a guess that if we don't count in all of the magic that he's using and just go off of his multi-attacks and the legendary actions, we might have a totally different thing going on here. So let's take a look at that while we have some time left. So if Strahd is just running around punching people in the face with his unarmed strikes, in the guts, you know, hitting people wherever, let's see what that looks like. So rounds 1 through 3 are all going to be the same. We're just looking at a whole bunch of unarmed strikes. This is going to be silly. And then our extra damage for legendary actions, we have 112. So we're looking at a difference of, what is that, 62 points of damage? Not, I mean, well, no, I shouldn't say it's not a lot. That actually is a pretty decent amount. So let's throw in 112 here and see what that shifts us down to. Oh, okay. So it only shifts Strahd down 2 and actually completely levels him out. He is a CR 18 across the board, not using any magic whatsoever. If he calls in his creatures of the night, he would get some support damage from there. But at this level where you're fighting Strahd, a CR, and I put this in air quotes, a CR 15, players are just going to fireball those creatures of the night. They got like no resistance unless something else says otherwise here. So as a caster, Strahd is a CR 20. As a melee, which he will eventually become because he'll run out of spell slots, he's a CR 18. And there you have it. That's how you break down and expose the monster's CR values. If you like what you've seen, hit the subscribe button down below and give the video a thumbs up. I post daily, and until next time, thanks for watching.